If you close your eyes and think about Sundays, what comes to mind? For me, it was being dropped off at religious school for half the day, family dinners with grandparents when I was younger, and as I grew older, it was what homework didn't I complete and how was I going to get it done, and to try to sleep as late as possible without my mother giving me a chore to do. Usually, it was to clean my room. Quite the conundrum. For some folks, Sundays were about rejuvenation before the work week begins, and for some, it was a work day. And for others, the image of sitting around a large table with family after having cooked together, reaping the benefits of that shared labor, stands out as one where hard work provides both nourishment and pride. I think about that some days where giving back was both part of my upbringing and continues to be a core personal value that I've shared within my own nuclear family. I had the great opportunity to teach and work overseas, and one of my observations was that there was a service requirement for everyone post-high school before continuing on to secondary education, trade, or vocational school. I never considered the U.S. a place where inscription in the military should ever be required outside of the necessity of warfare. But more recently, I wonder whether a year or two of paid service wouldn't be a great equalizer in our society, where service could mean anything from military to community service, like teaching, working in a food bank, community kitchen, garden, or for any nonprofit, and being paid for it, just like the military, working side by side with someone whom you might not otherwise meet because of how our society is stratified, lends itself to empathy, compassion, and an overall feeling of how much we are more alike than different, since as a society in general, we all want the same things. So how does this relate to Sundays? Welcome to Small and Gutsy, our podcast featuring nonprofits and social impact organizations under $10 million. My name is Dr. Laura Witkoff, and I'm excited and proud to be your host. We hope you'll love the stories as much as we do, and perhaps you will find needed services, a job, volunteer, invest in, or donate. And for all of you followers, Small and Gutsy has just been granted nonprofit 501c3 status. We are thrilled to have moved in this direction, enabling us to continue to meet our vision of interviewing as many smaller nonprofits and social impact organizations as we can. So please pass along any valuable information you hear today to others and send me the name of any organization you'd like featured at lwitkoff@gmail.com. That's 2 T's and 2 F's. Well, Sundays have become one big Sunday. Our featured nonprofit on today's podcast, Big Sunday, is the big equalizer in my book. It brings people together in service to others. I can't imagine a greater mission. Big Sunday was the brainchild of founder and executive director David Levinson, beginning in 1999 as a Mitzvah Day Project at his temple, mitzvah meaning good deed as a way to repair the world. And with 200 volunteers that day, David imagined a much bigger purpose and embarked on opportunities to share giving back with thousands of volunteers. And in 2006, David was named California Nonprofit Leader of the Year. By 2009, Big Sunday had 50,000 volunteers participating in 500 projects that include numerous nonprofits, schools. The list has grown incredibly long, as has the number of volunteers and projects, and not only in California, but has truly gone viral, but in a very physical, get out there and help kind of way. There is something for everyone. Big Sunday connects people through helping. They offer an enormous variety of opportunities and projects that unite people to improve lives, build community, and give everyone a sense of belonging. Their mission is simple and yet truly profound in that the magic formula is a combination of both building community and a sense of belonging that I believe everyone wants and deserves. To quote David, everyone wants to help if someone will only tell them how. Big Sunday does just that. I am so honored and excited to introduce my two guests today, founder and executive director of Big Sunday, David Levinson, and board member and impressive individual in his own right, Billy Ray, an incredibly talented writer, producer, and director who is best known for Captain Phillips, Shattered Glass, and The Hunger Games, as well as many others. But I think he is best known for his gifted contributions in helping veterans who want to become film and television writers, for his unending energy in protecting our democracy through messaging and the deeply held value and belief that all of us in this country want the same things. So let's get started. Welcome, David and Billy. Please share your passion for Big Sunday and how the two of you got connected.
Well, David should definitely go first. David's the hero here. So I'd like to give him the floor.
Great. David.
Thank you, my friend. And thank you, Laura, for that introduction. I hope I live up to it. And Billy, I'm sure will, but I hope I do too.
I think you already have, David, but keep going.
Well, and I preface every kind of conversation like this by saying no one is more surprised to find himself in a position where I get that kind of introduction and I'm being asked questions like this than me. And I always say, if I could do this, truly, trust me, anybody can. People frequently ask me how I got into this. I always tell them the same thing. I completely backed into it by mistake. It's been a lovely and unexpected journey, and we've been pedaling upward for over 20 years now. Really, most people are nice. Most people are good. Most people want to help, and they sometimes just need some help figuring out how best to do that, and we're just the folks that put the spark to the flame.
Yeah, I love it. And you know what, David? It sounded like from that early Mitzvah Project that you saw this by the fact that 200 volunteers came out and you thought, I'm guessing, you thought, if I can do this, and there's a need on the side of giving, and there's clearly a need on the side of those who want to receive or need to receive, how do I put that together? And how did you begin to do that? And then talk about how it's grown.
Okay, sure. So this is what happened. Back in my other life, I was a writer, and I wrote movies. And unlike my friend Billy, my specialty was movies that didn't get made. And at first,
I love that. Okay. Well, you know what? It was a mitzvah that they didn't get made. I'm sorry to say, because look what you're doing now.
From your lips to God's ears. But so I started getting involved with other stuff. I worked with a group called Beyond Shelter that provided housing, permanent housing for people who are homeless. And I worked with a group that helped provide them with furnishings for their house. They'd move into the apartment and we'd provide them with furniture and sheets and towels and blankets and plates and everything. And at the end of doing that, when you're furnishing an apartment for a family who's been living on the street or been living in their car, you don't have to ask yourself why you're doing it. You know why you're doing it. Yeah. But sometimes with the movie business, you do sometimes wonder why you're doing it. And then around that time, I was at my temple, and I'm not an observant guy. I always have to preface it by saying that because sometimes people hear this, it's like, oh, this very religious man decided to give back. No, I was just at the temple, and I was dropping my kids off at religious school. And the rabbi there, who was a buddy of mine, said the temple wanted to do a Mitzvah Day, which was very popular in the 90s. And he asked me if I would do it for the temple. I said yes, and I have forgiven him for that. And the first year we did it was at Temple Israel of Hollywood, up on Hollywood Boulevard. It was a long and proud history. And there were a couple hundred good-hearted Jewish people cleaning the beach and fixing up a library and serving a meal at a shelter and the things people would do with things like that. And one of the groups we helped was Catholic Charities. And I was very happy as a Jewish guy to help Catholic Charities, but I thought, all things being equal, I just as soon do it alongside a Catholic person. So the next year we invited some other groups to join us, some churches, some other synagogues. So it wasn't very scientific. You know, it was like I passed a church on Melrose that said Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish friends. I thought, okay, they seem like they'd be open to that. I passed a new synagogue being built. It was a largely LGBT synagogue. It said, social action is our middle name. It's like, that's good. I asked my kids' school, a secular private school. That was good. And we had 10 groups, about 800 people that second year. And we found out and did even more, and that was nice. But the year that it really changed was the third year. One of the groups I reached out to was Covenant House, a Catholic organization. And I called, and this is for our homeless youth. People, they had always had a lot of transgender people, and that was back in the day before so commonplace, and kids who have been kicked out by their families.
They still are, sadly.
Sadly, it still happens. We still work with them all the time, as recently as yesterday. And I called them and said, here's the thing we're doing. We're doing this day in May. And how can we help you? And how can we help your kids? And she said something that was really interesting to me. She said, our kids don't need help. They want to give help.
Oh, that's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a minute, have you met your kids? But that year they hosted a car wash in their parking lot to raise money for Students Run LA. And Students Run LA is a wonderful organization that works with at-risk youth to run the marathon. And they need money for sneakers and shorts. And, if you run the marathon, you feel like you can do anything. So it's a great organization. So they hosted a car wash that year in their parking lot. And it was the kids from Covenant House. And they were joined by a youth group from a synagogue and a Sunday school class from a gospel church. And they raised about, $400 for sneakers and stuff like that. And that was good. That was very, very nice.
Amazing.
But what was great was that they did it together. And it was at that moment that we went from being a community service day to a community building event with the idea that the world is not full of haves and have-nots. It's full of haves and have-mores. That absolutely everybody has some way that they can give help. And absolutely everybody has some time that they need help. And we all have to look out for one another.
One of the things that you picked up on is the piece of empowerment, which is when you empower a community, both giving and also those in need who are participating, it's quite moving. And it's all building self-esteem too on both sides of that equation. It's really a remarkable emotional shift that occurs.
We are proud of the fact that all these years later, we have people who help us as volunteers who are homeless people. And we have people who help us who are CEOs and movie stars. Everybody is treated and valued the same. We spun off from the temple years ago as an independent 501c3 with no religious agenda, no political agenda. We really are about celebrating our differences while finding common ground. I always feel that when you work side by side with somebody who is from a different world than your own, somebody you may not have met before, you're talking to that person, and then they are not the kid from Watts or the lady from Beverly Hills or the family from Boyle Heights or the couple from Koreatown. They're a person with a name, with a set of things they like, with a set of things they dislike, with things that they hope for, things that they dream about. And then it's a lot harder to hate them.
Oh, it's one of the oldest things is once you get to know people, it's really hard to have that kind of bias. And I think the other thing is that I've always thought each of us is only one step away of another person's situation, whether good or bad or otherwise, right? And so you always think of, if I'm only one step away, I need to really understand and support because that could be me one day. So this grew, and it is now, from what I've read, more national. So there are big Sundays in other cities, correct?
Well, what we do is, and first of all, just to be clear, Laura, we don't just do it on Sunday. We call it that because we started out a Sunday. And when we changed the name from Mitzvah Day to Big Sunday, we did it for lots of reasons, mainly because we were all about inclusivity and multiculturalism. So we wanted to make it more inclusive. But it was funny because when we changed the name, it's very rare when you do something that everybody agrees on. But when we changed the name from Mitzvah Day to Big Sunday, that was 20 years ago. But it got a unanimous reaction. Everybody hated the name change. Like Jewish groups said, "Why are you being so self-hating?" There were Christian groups. We worked with a Catholic school that said, "We love the name Mitzvah Day. It sounds so ethnic. We're not going to change it. We're going to keep calling it Mitzvah Day."
That's really funny.
And then I got an email from somebody at a Buddhist temple, and they're like, "David, that sounds like the name of a football game or something." As my wife said, she said, Dave, you have to work really hard to piss off the Buddhists.
Seriously. And you did it single-handedly.
And I did it. So I'm very proud of that. And so then as we grew, we did stuff 7 days a week. It was too hard to change the name. And so I would say, what does J. Crew mean? What does
Right. It's a brand. It's your brand.
But what we do in other cities is we work with a lot of schools, a lot of faith groups, a lot of businesses, as well as individuals and families and clubs and teams. But with corporate groups, often they have offices in cities all over the place. So they'll say, we'd love you to program events for our offices in LA and San Francisco and New York and Nashville and London and all these other places. So it's great. So we have such a large network, and that we're able to bring these to all other cities. We're working in all these different cities now. Sometimes we go and actually bring it to the other cities, which is great. We had a program called Foot the Bill Fund, where we're literally helping people pay their bills, their electric bill, their water bill. Mm-hmm. And somebody went on national television and mentioned that we did this, which was lovely. But then we started hearing from people all over the country, and help, in 22 different states or something. And I was happy and humbled, and our whole staff, our whole board was that way to be able to help so many people.
Which is amazing. So I want to bring Billy in here. So how did you guys get connected? And Billy, as a board member, obviously you have a particular role, but how did you guys get connected?
I make my living telling stories. For example, just so you know, whenever people ask me the history of Big Sunday, I don't go into the detailed explanation that David just did. John Ford, the film director, said, if the legend is ever more entertaining than the truth, just go with the legend.
Legend. I agree. That's I love that.
So when people ask me what's Big Sunday, I say, well, I'll tell you. Years ago, my friend David Levinson sat down with a rabbi and a priest. And they said, how can we make the world a better place? And they said, well, what if we took one Sunday and just got a bunch of people to do good works? And that's how it began. It has now become, zillions of people all across the country, which is a very truncated and not entirely truthful version of David's story. But as elevator pitches go, it's pretty successful. And no one has ever said, I don't want to know more about that organization. So anyway, as someone who made a living in the entertainment industry, I was acutely aware once my wife and I began a family that I wanted my kids to have a contrast to what I did for a living, where the successes and failures were very public. And the successes sometimes were over-aggrandized in a spectacular fashion, in a way that might make them feel like they were living in a bubble that wasn't entirely real. I wanted to make sure that my daughter first, and then 5 years later, my son, that they understood the concept of being part of something bigger and giving back in an anonymous way, which was the key thing.
So many kids have to do community service. And my big issue with that is that it sort of feels like they have to do it. Whereas you said, this is a value that I hold dear, and I'm going to do it with my kid. And then my kids. Yeah, but that doesn't, I just want to hold that space, because a lot of people don't do that. They don't think this can be a family thing, or they can take their kids and do this stuff. And it's so powerful, rather than kids feeling like, oh, I have to complete this community service for my college application, as an example.
I felt it was important that they see that I do it. And also really important that it be fun. And Big Sunday was always really, really fun. I mean, look, if you make it easy for people to do the right thing, they will do the right thing. I don't remember where I first heard about Big Sunday, but I heard about it and started dragging my daughter, when she was very, very young, fix up the garden at a school, or repaint a home where elderly people lived, or take care of a shelter, or whatever it was. And it started off just one weekend per year. But somehow I came in contact with David, who was clearly the boss. I think David had a sense that I wanted to do more and that I might be capable of helping in other ways. And so he just sort of harnessed me.
Harnessing Billy's energy is one of my greatest achievements with Big Sunday. Just so you know, it's just harnessing it in my direction is good for the whole Big Sunday, everything. But truly what I do think is everybody has their passion, everybody has their talent. Sometimes they need some help figuring out what it is. I often joke that at Big Sunday, our specialty is actually the reluctant volunteer, the person who thinks they don't have the time, They don't have the talent. They don't have the money. They might not even have the inclination, but they feel there's some reason they have to do it, whether it's getting service hours at school, filling their parole obligations, or just because something to talk about at the next dinner party they go to. Some people genuinely want to, but it's really, I one thing, and Big Sunday, let me make it extremely clear. I'm just like the front man. You know, it takes a village, and we have an amazing staff. We have an incredible board and tons of volunteers, new and long term. Part of it is finding the thing that the person that years ago, early on, we were going to a women's shelter, and there was a woman I knew. I didn't even know her very well. I sort of knew of her, and I always heard that she was a wonderful flautist. And I called her and I said, I hear you play the flute really nicely. We're serving brunch to a bunch of women, some of whom are mentally ill, and I want to really try to keep things chill and nice for them. Would you mind going and playing the flute for these women? And she was so delighted. You know, nobody tended to ask her to play the flute a lot. She was doing me a solid by doing it.
And you were doing one for her.
Which I didn't realize at the time. Right. And then she was helping these women. And it's like that with everything. It's really finding what works for people. Some people, you know, won't go to Skid Row as an example. They just, and I don't blame them. If you've been to Skid Row, it's awful. And I said, you know, don't go to Skid Row. We're going to this nursing home in Beverly Hills. It's the nicest nursing home you'll ever see. We'll all end up at this nursing home. But these people could use a visitor. They're loaded, but they could use a visitor. Other people are like, you know what? I have no problem with Skid Row. Just don't make me go to a nursing home. They're 95 degrees. I don't like old people. I can't take it. But everybody has their threshold. Everybody has their thing that speaks to them. And it's part of what we try to do at Big Sunday is to see everybody as people. Billy had been involved with his family, Big Sunday, ways for years. I remember, Billy, you coming with your sons at Thanksgiving stuff for years, and you'd bring your family. It was really during COVID that you and I started working together a lot because Billy was just like a house of fire with COVID trying to help people. And like so many groups, Big Sunday, we were pivoting every week. First it was people being lonely, then it was people having no money, and then it was people being worried where to get a test, and then George Floyd upended everything about reframing racial equity and the election and everything else. And Billy, I don't know if you remember this, but you'd email me and say, I have a whole group of people that really want to help, and what we really want to do is we want to help feed frontline workers. Can you point me in a direction? And then having done that, and Billy's network is like no one else's, he's like, okay, great, we did that. This week we want to help veterans. Can you put me in touch with a group? I mean, as I always say, I say this behind Billy's back all the time, but I have now said it to his face. This guy gets shit done.
I love it.
But so, and you know, and we would just go through lists of various causes and stuff like that. What some people are great at is playing the flute or making a meal or cleaning the beach. But what some people are great at is being a connector. They can go into any room and make somebody feel seen and heard and respected. And that's a gift.
It is a gift.
And that's why over the years, whether it's cleaning the beach or cooking a meal or being a plumber or being electrical or being a lawyer or being a dentist, we've used them all.
So that begs the question for me, and I know you have a substantial board, but you've grown over these last, 20-something years. And how do you all make decisions about what you're going to do on a regular basis, or does it change all the time? Share with me how that works.
We try to do is we try to see a need and fill it. Here's just one example. At the beginning of COVID, another person on our board who's a doctor said, there's all these frontline workers are putting themselves on the line. This is long before a vaccine. He said, what would be really nice is to send meals to frontline workers.
Yeah, it's great.
This was in the early weeks of the shutdown. So I called a couple hospitals. I called Cedars and I called St. John's and a couple others. Said, we have this idea. We want to send meals to your people. They're like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I can't believe it. You're so wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. A couple months later, would call and say, you know what? We have a free night like in 4 Thursdays, but it's all booked up and we're good. And so it's like, you know what? They don't need us anymore. Other people have stepped in. So we went and looked and found other hospitals, less well-known hospitals or further out of hospitals, having other issues. And that's just one example.
It's a great example, but there are so many organizations that get bogged down in their own bureaucracy, and you have mastered not doing that. So you see a need, or Billy says, hey, what do you think about this? Send you an email, and then all of a sudden it happens.
Yeah.
So, Billy, I want to toss it to you. What made you decide to join the board, and when was that?
Well, what made me decide to join the board was that he asked. I don't mean to be so reductive. I just mean when you see someone like David doing what he does, if he asks, the answer is going to be yes.
It's hard to say no.
So much of this has to do with a life philosophy. I don't know when this happened to me, and it may have been in my 30s. I don't know. I'm quite a bit older now. But at a certain point, it became intolerable to me to meet someone, even a stranger, and not impact their life.
Oh, I love that. Mm-hmm.
It just became intolerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter how long I've known somebody.
Right.
I want to impact their life in one way or another. Hence, Big Sunday.
Yeah.
But then you see David, who has impacted so many lives, people he'll never meet. How can you not applaud that? Another thing that's intolerable to me is it's really difficult for me to see any system that is not functioning optimally. Typically on Big Sundays, and I'm pretty sure this is how I got David's attention, we'd be at a school and, someone had dropped off 5,000 bags of clothing. And that 5,000 bags of clothing had to get taken apart, sorted, and then re-put together in a way that was going to be helpful to a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And so I'd be there with, my daughter who was 10 and my son who was 5, and I'd see the system and I'd see where it would get sort of clogged. And I'd say, oh, what if we did it this way? What if we put the shirts over to here and the pants over to here, and we had a separate thing for the bags and blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, like I was this little sort of mini manager. But it really made me happy because the system worked better and people got their clothing faster.
Right.
And I found that's where David, I think, would sort of see me at various venues and say, oh, yeah, this guy, he's a busybody.
You want Billy's systems, not my system.
But you've got to have somebody who kind of steps in and can do that and sees that efficiency is going to work. And what's great about the organization is it doesn't have these protocols, there's bureaucracy that stops that. And that's what's so remarkable is, as you said, there's a need and you jump in and you do it. And if it's not working super well, you're going to recommend something that's going to work better in that moment.
There was never a moment with Big Sunday where anyone said, no, this is how we do it.
Right. That's my point. That's great.
But I want to talk to you about a larger sense about community because
please.
In some of the work that I do outside of my job, I have access to polling of where we are as a country and what matters to us. And I will not steer us into a political conversation other than to say that the polling that I'm seeing again and again tells me that people are craving community.
Yeah.
They've been told for 7 years that they have to hate their neighbors and they're exhausted and they want to get their neighbors back. They want to go back to a time when they're thinking about bake sales and little and looking after each other's kids and things like Big Sunday. They want to know that if they're on the side of the road with a flat tire, that their neighbor is going to pull over to help without first checking to see if your bumper stickers match theirs.
Yeah, that's a
right. They want
point.
That again. Americans want that in a way that I'm not sure politicians on the right have quite grasped yet. But here's the thing, and it's the watchword of Big Sunday without ever being articulated by Big Sunday. If you want to get your neighbors back, you got to have your neighbors back.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a good bumper sticker.
It's what we actually want. And believe it or not, it is the genius of America. It's what made America a country in the first place, with that desire for community. I was thinking about the Constitutional Convention today. I spend time thinking about stuff like that, oddly. And what was it? It was a bunch of people, yes, admittedly, all white males, and they had their flaws, but it was also a bunch of people in a room who disagreed fundamentally about things and figured it out.
Right.
And created a conceptual advance over
Right.
any other country that had ever existed.
Right.
Because they
Yeah.
create community.
Yeah. We've lost the beauty of public discourse. Like the beauty of public discourse, which is we should be able to disagree appropriately to find a way forward, because ultimately we do all want the same things. So I love that, and I couldn't agree with you more. We recently moved to a new neighborhood, and the things that were so striking for me is that I had neighbors, which I would naturally do and stopped doing for a while, is bring me cookies. Ask me if I need anything. I was like, oh my God, I landed back where I grew up. What's going on here in the middle of LA? I could not have been happier. And in return, I have made meals for people who've had a baby or been sick or done, because it's just the natural part of what I both want to do. And so now I'm going to join Big Sunday. You know that, right? I'm hooked, of course. And the thing that I offer through Small and Gutsy is on a slightly different level, but any organizations that then you serve could absolutely be a featured organization on Small and Gutsy. Why not? This is how I want to live, and this is how I want our country and our world to ultimately be.
This is the natural impulse. Yeah, we can be defensive and hostile and tribal. Yeah, all that's true.
Right.
But ultimately, people want to come together. And here's some numbers that should get your attention. 62% of Americans believe that if they make enough noise, they can make a corporation pay attention to them as a consumer. 62%. Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
4% of Americans believe that if they make enough noise, they can make their government pay attention to them as a citizen. Okay.
Wow.
Just 4. Okay.
Wow.
That's a pretty striking gap. Another data point. Okay. Since 1980, okay, and I don't want to tag any particular president, but there was a particular president in 1980. Since 1980, $50 trillion with a T has moved from the bottom 90% in America to the richest 1% in America. It is, and by the way, it's happened under Democratic presidents too. It is the greatest migration of wealth in human history. Okay? There has never been a time when the haves had more, and when the gap between the richest 1% of our country and the other 99% was so great. People like David try to fill that gap.
Yeah,
they try to make a difference in that way.
Right.
We need more people like David. I'm not sure there are more people like David, but we need more of them, because you are going to create a permanent underclass.
Right.
And it's going to be massive, and it's going to be angry. And then what are we going to do?
Right.
And that's why places like Big Sunday are so vital.
So, David, do you have things? I've been on your website. Do you have activities like almost every day, or
we right now we have activities at our offices. Our office sort of functions almost like a de facto community center where people come in. It's an office, but we do tons of events, large and small. We have warehouse space because people, donate 5 pallets of jackets or something, and then we distribute them. We do events every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning at 10. Tuesday morning, I'll make a plug for all of them. They're called Sundays on Tuesdays.
I love it.
Where we make these big mosaic suns, and they're about 4 feet around. And you don't need artistic talent to do it. You just need sincerity. And they were created by a wonderful artist in town named Kathy Weiss. And we make them, and then they are donated to after-school programs, to hospitals, to shelters, to schools, and they're beautiful, and people of all talents and abilities and ages can do it. And it's fun. People sit around. It's like a quilting bee, and the idea was to do one every Tuesday. By this past Tuesday, we were doing 3 at the same time. On Thursday, for years, we've had an event called TM at 10, Thursday morning at 10, where we do all kinds of volunteering, whether it's providing hygiene kits for shelters, or this Thursday we're making packing bags of food, Italian dinners for families who are struggling, who need bags of food, and on and on. It's a wonderful event, and we have a lot of regulars. whether they are retirees, people new to town, stay-at-home moms and dads, people between jobs. During vacations, we got a lot of kids. And somebody came, we got a lot of regulars, and somebody said something to me that meant so much to me. She was a single mom of a teenager, had moved to LA from the East Coast, didn't know a soul. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, I started coming to your Thursday events because I wanted to help the community, but instead I found the community.
I knew she was going to say that's beautiful.
And this was before COVID, and they these guys really are great friends and to each other and to us. And then what happened on Thursdays is we started getting a lot of groups of people with special needs, and everybody's welcome, and it was great. Well, we started finding, though, sometimes some of the people, the special needs people, weren't able to necessarily keep up with the projects, or they had perhaps some other challenges. So what we decided to do was start another group on Wednesday mornings. And not that anyone ever complained or anything. It was just we thought we'd start another thing on Wednesdays geared to people with special needs. And let me make it clear. These are people that want to give back. Like they want to volunteer because they want to help. And so some of them from Thursdays now come on Wednesdays. They're called Accessible Wednesdays. And it's geared for people with special needs. But everyone is welcome. Like we've had a group of college kids come last week because a lot of it is socialization for people with special needs. So they kept them company and did the project with them. And so mixed it all up because people shouldn't be hindered from helping because of ability or age or means.
No, it's a sense of, again, a sense of belonging. Why shouldn't people be given the opportunity if they have the desire?
And we have, and it's interesting because there's special needs groups from all over town, but they come to the various events. So that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then we do special events. We did our cruise this weekend, where on April we have a month that started during COVID called Wild and Woolly April, because I thought everybody was so overwhelmed by the heaviness, the death, and the anger, and the all the stuff going on. We decided to have a month focused on animals because we thought that was like a nice, and it's not just dog and cat rescue, though we do that, and we have a big dog food versus cat food, pet food collection. I'm a dog guy, always on team dog, but it's for homeless people, provide pet food for homeless people whose pets are very important to them. But we work with groups that do therapeutic horseback riding, collections for endangered species like elephants, and we've had sloths and mules. And some people, it was like toward what we were saying before. Some people it's all about homelessness. Some people really care about veterans. Some people really care about seniors. Some it's about STEM. Some people it's all about cats. They really care about cats. I always say, I really hate cats. I haven't downright antipathy. If they were to all die, I'd really be okay. With apologies to the nice cat people out there.
It's too funny. But what's great is that even though you don't like cats, you still have a program for cats.
We do tons of stuff for cats because some people love cats, and more power to them. And somebody has to look out for the cats.
If you both are ready, and this was such a fun conversation and so interesting, and I encourage everyone to get to a big Sunday activity, and we'll go into that in a minute after I ask my round of quick and gutsies, which are fun.
The lightning round?
Yeah, the lightning round, but you don't have to be quick. We always get these pearls in this last little bit. But I also want to put a plug for any organization that you provide a service that is a social impact organization, a nonprofit under 10 million. Give them my info, and I'm happy to feature them on my podcast because it is completely free. And it's a pleasure, and it's the way, when you talk about the unexpected surprises that you've had in life, this was one for me, was developing Small and Gutsy and meeting people like you and Billy, and the gifts that you are giving back to the world keeps me doing what I'm doing, because I'm so in awe and admiration of the work that's being done globally on behalf of other people and with other people, because that is truly building community. And we hope Small and Gutsy becomes a bigger family at some point. So what is at the top of your wish list for Big Sunday? And the answer can't be money or funding.
Who first?
You go first.
I want Big Sunday in all 50 states. I want it to become a thing like the Peace Corps. Everybody knows it's a universal good.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that makes Americans feel better about America.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, that's great. Great. David, what about you?
As I keep saying, this has been such a trying time. What I find for myself, I didn't need a global pandemic to know that people could be nice and good.
Yeah.
I am so lucky that I've been able to see that at Big Sunday for so long. I hope we can grow, whether it's wider or deeper or bigger or broader, because I do feel what both of you are saying, that people are yearning for more kindness, for more generosity of spirit. I think it's there. And I just want to be able to, as Big Sunday, create a world where we, as I said before, where we assume the best in each other, where we see the best in each other, and where we bring out the best in each other. Especially in these last few years, and I'll keep from naming names, but there's a number of them who are working overtime to bring out the worst in one another.
Yeah, so true.
It makes life harder.
If you were to think of a song that describes Big Sunday, what would it be?
Wow. Okay, I'm going to go with Climb Every Mountain.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
I love Climb Every Mountain.
I do too.
I'm a sucker for the sound of music.
Well, with David, it can't be anything from Cats.
Fair enough. Good. Well said. David, what about you? Climb Every Mountain. That's a good one.
The Climb Every Mountain is a good one. We do we did a gala. We do sing-alongs at our galas sometimes.
I love it.
It was put on hold for COVID. And the first time we did a sing-along, it was call it hokey, but we did You've Got a Friend.
Oh, no, it's not hokey at all. I love it.
And I will say, I'm going to send you, we actually, shortly before COVID, we actually recorded a song.
Just a quick note about the song to which David is referring. He may not tell you this, but he wrote the lyrics and the music to the song that really, in my opinion, represents Big Sunday.
We have a video. I'll send you.
My second choice.
Yeah.
My second choice to Climb Every Mountain would be Love Train.
I love that song. We actually thought, because the next year we sang Stand By Me, and we talked about Love Train, but it's like, Love Train is really hard to sing.
No, give everyone the words.
Right.
No, I don't accept that at all.
You can do it as a karaoke. Just play the background music and the words, and people will do it. I have the worst voice in the world, and yet I'd be up there singing too, just kind of behind somebody so I wouldn't embarrass other people, or they wouldn't want to kick me. I got kicked out of my 4th grade choir. Okay. So tell me, what makes Big Sunday gutsy? You're on Small and Gutsy. What makes Big Sunday gutsy? Because it's gutsy.
I think what makes Big Sunday gutsy is its relentless positivity and its relentless dependence on the kindness of strangers at a time of deep cynicism when you could be made fun of for that.
Yes.
And Big Sunday never wavers.
David, what do you think? It's great, Billy.
I feel a bit too much about myself, and I will say Big Sunday has an amazing staff, and the way there's a theory of hiring which is, who do you want on the bus? And that is one theory of hiring behind Big Sunday. And there's often people, it's just like, this person has to be on the bus. They just get it. And sometimes it's maybe not, it's a person from left field, or it might not check all the boxes that maybe we're looking for. But I'd say there's a sense, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is who we need. This is a really nice person, idealistic person. They need to join this party. That's true with the board as well. But with, I as I say, I'm the front man and get far more than my share of the credit. And it's
Not true.
a lot of people.
Completely untrue. But
Thank you. But a lot of people.
I have two problems with what you're doing. One, you're completely violating the lightning round. And two, you're saying something that's fundamentally untrue about yourself.
So let me do a moment of interpretation of that. So the gutsy piece is you take risks on people who don't check all the boxes. And what makes you gutsy is you go with your gut and say, this person really needs to be on the bus. And I commend you for that. So own that piece, as Billy said, because it does, you can always hire for skill and experience, but hiring for attitude is the most important thing you can do. And that's what you're talking about. And values, common values. So what is something that outsiders or even a few insiders don't know about Big Sunday?
We have nowhere to live. We're searching for a permanent office space. We keep trying to buy buildings, and then we keep getting told no or getting outbid. It's literally all we talk about.
Thank you for bringing that up, Billy. We had 4 landlords over 13 years, and the last landlord is tearing the building down. And I will say, when the new landlord came in, I was having trouble reaching him, and then I actually reached him, and then sure enough, he comes with his family to help at Thanksgiving. And you know what? He's a wonderful guy. He's been a total mensch. And when I met him, I said, you know what? I really wanted to hate you. I just wanted to hate you so much because we have to move. But you're a really good guy. And I gave him a big hug, and he gave me a big hug. And he was very fair with us in many ways. But we had to move to a new building because they're tearing it down. The new building, we moved into it knowing they're tearing it down. And so we're trying to buy a permanent space, and it's very
challenging. Yeah.
And we're trying to build what is really going to be a central community center for people to come just in the name of kindness, helping one another with a kitchen and a library and green space and parking and all that. So it's, yeah.
So a big shout out for any listener who has any space that they're willing to sell for a really good cause. So this may be a weird question for both of you, having been, at least Billy's in the entertainment industry and in politics in some ways, but in the behind the scenes in a great way. And David, this was your former life. If you could get one celebrity or influencer to endorse or talk about Big Sunday, who might that be? Besides Billy.
Wow, that's a great question.
Thank you. Thought you guys would hate that question. I thought it would be like the cat-dog question.
Well, I can jump in first. So we've had a lot of celebrities come through in all kinds of ways. Often when celebrities come, they just come as people, or they come as moms and dads. So it's a hard question. We've really wrestled with that about, I understand the value of celebrity and stuff like that.
The question sort of begs, is there a way to elevate your brand through an influencer or through a celebrity? And because celebrities come to be regular people, because that's really what you're building is that community, does that question make sense? Or would it help you? Or would it be when I don't know. It's a fair pushback for me.
We had, Kamala Harris came to our Thanksgiving event this year. It was a great honor to Big Sunday because of her side, and she was lovely. She couldn't have been nicer, but it was a very flattering seal of approval for our event.
Yeah,
we were doing it at Baldwin Hills Elementary School, which is the school or one of the last schools with a in LAUSD with a predominantly Black student body.
Yeah.
And it was a great source of pride. We've done a lot of work at the school. It was a great source of pride for the school that she came, understandably. People were thrilled. I mean, people were crying. People were so honored to meet her.
Right.
There was one woman whose son was with her practically doing backflips in the crowd. I was so happy for her.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me suggest, and then I want to toss it to Billy. So let me suggest that any celebrity who wants to come forward to support an event in a big way through tweeting or through their social media, you'd be fine with
Sure,
that.
sure.
Okay,
But I'm
let's.
not, and it really they have to be on brand. And if it's a celebrity that's a jerk, or that is openly
Right,
racist or
right,
misogynistic or
right,
homophobic, like we don't want them out there burnishing their brand
right.
on our
Of
backs.
course. Billy, what about you? Anybody come to mind?
David, this is how you do a lightning round. Okay. LeBron James.
Fair enough. Great. So, first of all, how do people reach you, David? How do people give us the website?
The website is bigsunday.org. If they want to reach me, I'm David at bigsunday.org. And I try my best to return all emails because I think it's really rude when people don't.
Pretty incredible. So that's incredible right there to do that in such a big space and big organization. So I want to first, I want to encourage everybody listening who's in the LA area or anywhere nearby, or to find a Big Sunday in their own city if they aren't in LA, but to really get on the website and participate in something, because really that's going to shift and change our culture and our society because of what you started. And I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you both for being with me on Small and Gutsy, for sharing ideas and thoughts and having this conversation. I want to leave with something that I pulled from your website, which is absolutely everyone has some way that they can help somebody else. And I really believe that's true. And I really believe that in doing so, we will shift our culture back to the democracy, Billy, that you spoke about.
Thank you for the platform. We really appreciate it.
Oh, totally. It's total pleasure. It's fun to hang out with my buddy Billy, who I usually just see on the fly, too.
Any last comments, thoughts, things that you want to add?
Yeah. I think as a society, we're trying to move, towards community over chaos.
Yeah.
And votes over violence, and books over bans, and laws over lies, and truth over tantrums. Yeah. I could alliterate all day, but
I love it. Mm-hmm.
You get the point. Mm-hmm. Don't wait for someone else to make those changes. You can make those changes in your own way. Mm-hmm. You can make the difference. David Levinson did it.
Yeah.
And look at the army of good that he's created.
I really, really appreciate this kind of conversation. We don't have it enough. And each of us can do our part to shift not only our own thinking and experience, but also someone else's by virtue of showing up. And I love that. And it's part of my small and gutsy philosophy. So if you have organizations, send them my way. But I'm going to show up when I can, because you give me energy. And that's what this is about: energy and love, and community and belonging, and building self-esteem. And once we feel good about ourselves, we can feel good about others. And part of doing that is by offering what we can. And that really is what you're talking about. And I just want that message, both David through Big Sunday, but also Billy through the work that you do, because it's just remarkable. And I really appreciate both of you.
Thanks so much, both of you guys. Very, very
Good night.
All of the Small and Gutsy episodes can be found on the Intrinsic Group website, which has a Small and Gutsy page. The opinions and viewpoints expressed by our guests are independent and do not reflect the position of Small and Gutsy. Of course, we can't take responsibility outside of our own vetting of the organizations we interview, so before you sign on to support or work for them, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and research them as well. We just want you to learn about the Small and Gutsy nonprofit and social impact organizational sector so they can spread their story and their impactful work. I want to thank my partners in this endeavor, the Intrinsic Group, my brilliant sound engineer and composer, Pavel Franson, my very talented graphic designer, Nate Addy. Please check out their bios on the Intrinsic website. My incredible board of directors, Tracy Brown, John Gatto, Lucy Mello, Serena Rajabian, who believed in me and this project enough so to sign on to support this effort, and all of the folks, friends, and family who have guided and inspired me. A very special thank you to my biggest champion, number one fan, and best friend, without whom none of this would be possible. Thanks, Mark Witkoff. Thanks for being there. And thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends, give us some stars, and write a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. From small and gutsy to big with impact, I'm Laura Whitkoff. Thanks for listening.